Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you were watching this video. It's for everyone, and today I'm going to talk on Nelson Mandela. Okay, so everyone knows Nelson Mandela, and today I'm going to talk on an excerpt from Mandela's book, his autobiographical book titled Long Walk to Freedom. This particular lesson is given in NCERT book First Flight for class 10, and today I'm going to explain this particular lesson. So before we go to the lesson, a few things about Nelson Mandela. So we know Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was born on 18 July 1918 at Hulu in Mvezo, Cape Province of South Africa. He belonged to Xhosa tribe. You know, interestingly, this few things that I have pronounced, which are really not our kind of pronunciations. Okay, so first of all, his middle name, Mandela's middle name, is not pronounced Rolihlahla. It's pronounced Rolihlahla. Rolihlahla. Okay, mind it. And then his birthplace, a small village in Mvezo. Okay, so this is pronounced as Hunu. You have to front click the tongue like this first and then pronounce it Hunu. Hunu. Okay, this is how it is. And then the next thing is his tribe name. Okay, his tribe name, which is pronounced Xhosa. You have to side click the tongue like this. Xhosa, Xhosa, Xhosa. That's how it is. Okay, so there's few things you need to know. We may not be very good at pronouncing such kind of words, but we can try it. All right. Now coming to the point, we know Nelson Mandela fought against a system of government called apartheid. And this system called apartheid separates people or discriminates people on the basis of race. Okay, so we come to know that until very recently, this system of government was in power in South Africa. There in South Africa, the whites dominated, discriminated the blacks of their own country. And so Mandela was part of this fight against the system to abolish, to overthrow this particular system and bring a new system of government in the country. Okay, so it was almost a century-long fight, and you know, this system actually began in the first decade of the 20th century, and it came to an end in the same century, in the last decade. Okay, the last decade of 20th century. And you know, during this fight, Mandela had to spend half of his life in prison. 3 different prisons. Okay, about 27 years he had to spend his life in prison. All right, yet he fought. But something is different here. Your book tells it's about 30 years, but the exact thing I believe is 27 years. Okay, so that's what it is. We come to know about this kind of fight from Mandela's own words, how he fought it. We know that Mandela during this fight was involved directly in many bombings, killings of people, gunfire. Okay, and that system called apartheid actually termed him as a terrorist. Of course, he became like a terrorist. But you know, you should know one thing, that the government itself was illegal. When the government itself was illegal, and if the people are fighting against such system of government, the fighters are not actually terrorists. Mind it. Okay, so we know if we study more about Nelson Mandela, you will come to know that he received more than 250 awards. That's not a small thing. A terrorist awarded more than 250 times, that's not possible. You see, within this, you can count on, he was awarded Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. Not only that, back in 1990, he was awarded Bharat Ratna with our country. Our country, India, awarded him the highest civilian award, which is Bharat Ratna in 1990. Just imagine this. Okay? And not only that, one more memorable award that he was awarded with was Times Person of the Year 1993. That's really, really great. Okay? Now, if the world considered him a terrorist, why would he become the first non-American, non-European to receive this award, Nobel Peace Prize? Why? Because he was fighting for humanity, for the greater cause of humanity, equality, integrity, peace. You know, the world recognized that he is not a terrorist, but he is a peace-loving fellow. Okay? So only his country, South Africa, considered him or recognized him as a terrorist because he was fighting, because he was killing. Mandela became the first black president of South Africa with a new system of government, because we know he was fighting for the change in the government or change of government. Okay? After a century-long fight, almost a century-long fight, it was finally decided that an election, a democratic elections might be held, and in that election, Nelson Mandela won. His party, African National Congress, won 252 seats out of 400 seats. That's more than 50%, more than 60%. Okay, so with the victory of the African National Congress, Nelson Mandela became the first black president of South Africa. Okay, so on 10th May 1994, 10th May 1994, it was the inauguration day for South Africa's installation of the new democratic system of government. Okay, so here Mandela writes like this: 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. So this is what Mandela writes on 10th May. Even before that, before the inauguration that was held on 10th May 1994, before 10th May 1994, even people came to Mandela, great leaders of the world, dignitaries came to Mandela in order to pay respect to him, in order to congratulate him and welcome his new government into the world of democracy. Okay? So he says that on the day of inauguration, it would be the largest gathering of people, largest gathering of international leaders on African soil, South African soil. Okay? Never ever this kind of gathering of international leaders would happen, either in future or it happened in the past. No. Okay? The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheater formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. So, in Pretoria, the union buildings actually formed like an auditorium. Okay, for decades this had been the seat of white supremacy. The union buildings formed the white supremacist seat. So today he says it is the place of rainbow gathering of different people. Blacks and whites all together came forward to welcome the new government. Okay, so that was the first non-racial government of South Africa. The racial domination, racial discrimination ended, and that's why whites and blacks, all the people gathered together to welcome the new government. Okay, I believe even the whites did not like such kind of discrimination, probably many, but there are leaders, politicians who are hungry for power and they like to discriminate another section of people. But apart from them, the general public might have been in support with the blacks. Okay, on that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Janani. On the podium, Mr. De Klerk was first sworn in as a second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as the first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and its people. So, he says, on that lovely autumn day, 10th May is an autumn day. We are in the northern hemisphere, so there is nothing fanciful idea behind this autumn day. Some might think because Mandela said 10th May dawn bright and clear, it's a beautiful day, inauguration day, so many people gathered. No, this idea is not like that. 10th May or the month of May, April, May is really autumn in South Africa, because South Africa lies in the south of the equator. Our globe is divided into two halves, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. When it is winter in the north, it is summer in the south. When it is spring here in the north, then it is autumn in the south. So 10th May here in our northern hemisphere, we experience it is spring season, but there in South Africa it is really truly autumn season. Okay, so there is no fanciful idea behind this saying lovely autumn day. It's because of the location of South Africa. It's a geographical phenomenon. Okay, so nothing fanciful. So here on that particular day, his daughter accompanied him up to the podium. Okay, and on the podium we can see Mr. De Klerk first sworn in as the second deputy president, and comes Mr. Thabo Mbeki, who was sworn in as the first deputy president. And then when it came to his turn to sworn in as the first black president of South Africa, he pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and devote himself for the well-being of South Africa, for the well-being of the Republic and its people. So he said like this, what Mandela said to the watching world and to the guests assembled there, to those people who were watching live on the television set, sitting at home, and people those who were gathered on that day, on the 10th May of 1994. He said like this, today all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. It's a newborn liberty because people were under bondage, under discrimination. No rights were given by the whites. So it is a new liberty installation of democracy in South Africa is a new liberty. Okay, so he says like this: out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. Mandela says that this system of government suffered the people in such a way, he says, extraordinary human disaster. He calls the apartheid system as an extraordinary human disaster. It lasted too long. It lasted about a century. And so, Mandela thinks out of this long-lasting suffering, there must be born a society which all humanity will be proud of, will be happy. If a new society is born out of such suffering, such disaster. Okay? We who were outlaws not so long ago have today been given the rare privilege to be host to the nations of the world on our own soil. Mandela says that his country was an outlaw. Outlaw means illegal. You know what? The countries of the world considered South Africa illegal, and they disconnected all kinds of relationships, political relationships, business relationships, diplomatic relationships. Every relationships were cancelled. South Africa was considered an illegal country, illegal nation. So he says outlaws. Okay, so now, because of the fight that Mandela and his party, his comrades, so many thousands of people who sacrificed their lives for the cause of humanity of South Africa, you know, he says they have been given a rare privilege to host, to become a host to the people of the world. Okay? Privilege to be host to the nations of the world. We have already seen thousands of international leaders gathered in South Africa in order to welcome the new democratic government. Okay? So, he says, we thank all our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. Human dignity, for peace, for justice. It is a common victory. Victory for all. Okay? So, he thanked the international leaders for having come to his country to take part on the inauguration day of the installation of new democratic government in South Africa. He says, we have at last achieved our political emancipation. Politically, the blacks were deprived. Today, they were emancipated. Okay? So, they are free. They received their freedom. That's what it says. Political emancipation. Political freedom. Okay? We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender and other discrimination. You know what? Mandela says that he pledged himself towards liberating all people from the continuing bondage. You know what continuing bondage means? The suffering that people were bearing. This suffering doesn't stop instantly. It will continue. You know what? One of my family members got killed during this system of government. Might have been put to jail for long years. You know what? The suffering that I have because of this, the suffering that is caused to me, that suffering is not instantly going to end. It's going to last for some time longer. So Mandela says this continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, he is going to work on that area so that people get peace in their life. Okay? Continuing bondage of poverty, because the black section of people was dominated. And so he says that poverty is still continuing. Instantly today only they are not going to get rich. It will take time for them, because many of them might get jobs that will help come out from their poverty. Many of them will go on business or farming and all that will help them come out of their poverty. So that's what Mandela says. He is going to work on this area of poverty, deprivation and suffering. And along with that, he also says gender and other discrimination. Gender discrimination in South Africa is of 3 levels. You think the blacks of South Africa as a whole are dominated by the whites as a whole. Okay? And then again you see the women of South Africa are actually dominated by their own black male people. The black male dominates the black female. Okay? At the same time, the black female were dominated by the whites. So you see, the levels of domination, the levels of discrimination faced by the people of South Africa. So he says, from such kind of discrimination, he is going to work on bringing out people from such kind of discrimination. Okay? Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. This is what Mandela says during his speech on 10th May 1994. Okay? So he says that oppression will never happen again in South Africa. He has ensured that he is going to work on this particular thing which people have experienced so many years, that he's surely going to bring them out of oppression. Okay? And there will be peace, there will be equality. So he says, the sun that has risen in South African soil will never set again. The natural sun is going to set, of course. That's not what Mandela says. But he says the dawn of peace, the dawn of justice, the dawn of human dignity that has risen in the South African soil is not going to set again. It's going to stay on high and light on the South African soil. That's what Mandela promises. This is his pledge to the people. That he is going to free everybody. He's going to work for everybody. That's what it is. And he says, let freedom reign. Let freedom reign. There should be freedom all around in South Africa. No one should discriminate. No one should dominate another section of people. Okay? This is what it is. On that same day, he says, a few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers roared in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Mind this, freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of South African Defence Force and police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before, they would not have saluted but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of New South African flag. Mandela talks about the glory of his country, the military force. Okay, so he says, a moments later, after his speech, after the inauguration, okay, spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, troop carriers were seen in perfect combination. They were flying above the Union buildings. Okay, this is the pinpoint military precision and force of South Africa. Okay, and with this demonstration, they are not only trying to demonstrate their power, they were trying to demonstrate their loyalty to the new government. The military has not changed. The same military who were during the system of apartheid are also today, on this day, the same people. Now Mandela says that these people painted with ribbons and stars, okay, those people who were awarded earlier during the system of apartheid, same people with the same decorated chests, they are coming forward to salute Mandela. Okay, and when they saluted Mandela, Mandela says, I was not unmindful of the situation gone by. What was the situation? Not many days before, not many months before, those military officers, those police officers would not have saluted him but arrested him. He was put to jail 3 times in 3 different prisons. 27 years, mind it. A half of his life was spent in prison. So he says that they are loyal to the government. Whoever comes and rule the country, they are loyal to that fellow or to that government. Today, with the change of government, the same people have, pledged their loyalty to the government, to the new government. Okay? So, finally what you can see, a chevron of Impala jets emitted some smoke trails. That smoke trail colored black, red, green, blue, and gold. This is the new symbol, new color of South African flag. Okay, so the day was symbolized for me by the playing of our 2 national anthems. Mandela says that day was significantly symbolized. Symbolized with what? Symbolized with acceptance, integrity between 2 sections of people, the whites and the blacks. Okay, 2 national anthems were sang. The anthem of the whites and the anthem of the blacks. How did they sing? The whites sang the anthem of the blacks and the blacks sang the anthem of the whites. They despised and rejected the anthems earlier, but today the same people who rejected another section of people's anthem sang that anthem. So you can see Nkosi Sikelel Africa. This is the anthem of the blacks, but this song was sung by the whites on that particular day. But the problem is they did not know the lyrics. Still they tried to sing. This is the acceptance of peace, harmony, and an idea to form a new government, a multinational government. That's what it tries to bring out. Okay, so it was very, very significant. The whites accepted the blacks and the blacks accepted the whites. That's what it is. Okay, even the blacks did not know the anthem of the whites, the lyrics actually, and the whites did not know the anthem of the blacks, the lyrics. but they still tried to sing. And soon they would, by heart, they would remember the words. Okay? So this is what Mandela says. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history. Mandela says, on that particular day, while sitting and observing, watching the audience, the inauguration ceremony, a sense of history overwhelmed him. Okay? A sense of history overwhelmed him. What was that sense of history? So he says like this, in the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, and before my own birth, the white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their differences and created a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned peoples of their own land. This is the sense of history. You know, before this particular structure of government was instituted, before Mandela was born, that is probably the beginning of 1900s. So you say between 1900 to 1910, this system of government was instituted. And this happened after the Anglo-Boer War. There was a bitter war between the blacks and the whites, where the blacks were utterly defeated. And this particular defeat gave way for the white people to patch up their differences and erect a racial domination. And this result is the system called apartheid. This system of government was installed in South Africa. Okay? So that was in the first decade of the 20th century, and this particular government was overturned in the last decade of the same century, 20th century. Okay? So Mandela says like this, the structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Harshest and most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Why? The other countries of the world considered South Africa, because of this system of government, that it was an outlaw. Mandela has already expressed it with his own mouth that Africa was considered an outlaw, illegal. The system of government was illegal. This was the harshest and most inhuman societies the world has ever known. Okay? So, later on, at the end of the century, 20th century, this particular system of government was overturned, and the newly introduced government, that is the new democratic government, replaced. This particular government recognized the rights and freedoms of all peoples, regardless of their color of the skin, whatever color they may be, black, yellow, white, whatever. So they are going to receive all the rights and freedoms. They are going to be recognized in all situations. Okay? That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people. This particular day, the inauguration day of the first democratic government, the installation of the first democratic government, come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of his people. Okay? So many people died, sacrificed their own lives for the cause of humanity. Their suffering, their courage can never be counted, or it can never be repaid. Mandela says, you cannot repay their sacrifices. Okay? And he says that he felt like so many other days that he was simply the sum of all those patriots who had gone before him. Because that long line, that long noble line of patriots ended with Mandela. You know what? The truth is, if a nation is not oppressed, there will be no patriots born in that nation. You can hardly recall any patriots born in England. Why? because England was once dominating different other countries of the world. India was one. So in India, you can see there are great patriots born. Subhash Chandra Bose. You can name others like Gandhi, Nehru. You can name Tilak. You can name Patel. So there are so many great patriots who were born because of the oppression of the whites in India also. Okay, so in South Africa also, it's because of the oppression of the whites over the blacks, so many patriots were born. So that long line of patriots who fought for the cause of the country ended with Mandela, because now the system is overturned and the new system of government is installed, and he becomes the first black president, and he says that he is going to set the legacy by this. So he says like this, that long noble line ended and now began again with me. Began again with me. What was began with him? The political diplomacy. So he becomes the first black president. That long noble line of fighters, that long noble line of patriots ended with him. He was a patriot. And with the installation of new government, that patriotism was over. And what comes now? They are going to be the world leaders, the political leaders of a nation. So he becomes one of the first. Okay? So he becomes the first black president, and then a new line has now begun with him. Alright? Mandela was especially painful about people whom he could not thank personally, because they are now dead. Okay? They are no more living. They sacrificed for the country and they died. So, because of those people only, today, that they can see the inauguration of the new government, but they are no more living to taste this particular happiness. Okay? Mandela says that the policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in the hearts of the people of South Africa. And, you know, he says all the people, all the black people are now going to spend many years in healing that wound. That wound is not going to be healed immediately and you will become happy. You have become poor so many years. Today, immediately, instantly, with the new government, you are not going to become rich. So, from that profound hurt, from that profound wound, they have to come out. Okay? But, you know, this particular suffering that they endured, this has some unintended effect. What was that effect? Great patriots like Oliver Tambo's, Walter Sisulu's, the Chief Lutulis, the Yusuf Dadus, the Prem Fishers, the Robert Subukwes were produced. Okay? Plurality is shown here, the Oliver Tambo's, the Walter Sisulu's. It means people who are like Oliver Tambo, people who are like Walter Sisulu, people who are like Chief Lutuli, people who are like Yusuf Dadu, people who are like Bram Fisher, people who are like Robert Sobukwe. Thousands of people like this whose names have been written down here. Thousands of people like them were born. They were all patriots, named and unnamed. Yes or no? So that's what he says. Men of such extraordinary courage and wisdom and generosity you can never see again, because that oppression has ended and no more patriots are going to born again. Okay? So their like may not be known again in the world. Okay? People like them will never be born again. That's what Mandela says. Perhaps he thinks it requires depths of operation to create heights of character like this. Okay, Mandela says that the people of his country are the greatest wealth of his country. Even he says, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. Africa is filled with natural resources, diamonds and gems. Okay, but he says his people are the greatest wealth of the country. Okay, so it is from these thousands of friends, comrades during the struggle that Mandela learned the meaning of courage. Okay, so he says like this: time and again people had undergone brutality, harshness under the apartheid rule. Okay, they were tortured, they were attacked, they were pushed to limit. You can't go further than that, otherwise you are going to die. So up to that you have been beaten. Now you imagine, you still go on, you still don't break, you still don't succumb to death, you still fight on. That is courage. Okay, that is courage. That is courage that comes with resilience immediately. Okay, that defies the imagination. You cannot imagine further than this, that a man can be brutally treated, a man can be tortured, a man can be beaten, but doesn't die. See, this is it. And from such people, Mandela learned courage. And he says, I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage doesn't mean that you don't feel afraid. Courage means you feel afraid, but you overcome that fear. Okay? And he says, the brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. A brave man is not a man who doesn't feel afraid. Okay? Or a brave man is not a man who doesn't have fear. But a brave man is a man who has got fears, but who has conquered that fear. He is brave. One who can conquer his own fears is brave. That's what Mandela learned from his comrades. Okay? We know no one is born hating another man. When I was born, I did not born to hate another fellow. Hatred is taught to people. With the system of apartheid, people were taught to hate another section of people of their own country. So if people can be taught to hate, they can also be taught to love, because love naturally comes to human heart. Okay, human love is like the flame that can be hidden, that can be kept hidden, but can never be extinguished. Understood? So this is what Mandela has learned from those people, from those comrades who fought during the apartheid system. Okay, so I think I'm going to wind up today's class here. We have another part in the lesson that I'm going to explain to you in the next upcoming video. Okay, so till then, stay safe, work hard. Thank you for watching.